Hello, everybody. Uh, nice to see you in the session today. I can see people are logging in. So while you're logging in, get familiar with the chat box in Zoom. And would you be so kind and chat me where you're from? Let's see what kind of audience we are having today. So let me... Okay, so Hungary, Peru, Colombia, USA, Ecuador, Mexico, Costa Rica, right, Ukraine, Moldova. Great, fantastic. So we have a real global audience today. It's very, very nice to, well, see you in the session today. My name's Kamil Petrik, as you can see, and we're going to discuss Pearson English International Certificate today, computer-based test, and we're going to discuss reading. This is a part of a broader project. This is a part of Teacher Training Academy 2023. This academy started in March the 30th, and today we are meeting to discuss reading. The academy will continue until the end of November, right? So as you can see, we have a lot of sessions for discussing different kinds of different aspects of computer-based test international certificate. This academy is accompanied by a digital notebook, right, that you can download. I'm going to share a link towards the end of my session today. This digital notebook contains some remarks, some notes from each session, plus some homework, right? There is also a piece of homework from my session today that I'm going to discuss. After the session, you're going to receive the certificate of attendance, and you'll be asked to give some feedback. There will be a quick feedback survey delivered to your email box. So today, developing reading skills. This is obviously within the context of Pearson English International Certificate computer-based test. So let's have a look at that. Before we start, obviously, as I said at the beginning, there is this chat box at the top. So if you feel like it, then you can share some ideas in the chat. There will be some questions throughout the sessions that I'll ask you to give the answers over the chat box, obviously. So use it. There's also a Q&A box for some questions. If there are any questions that you have, you can put them into this Q&A, and I will address those questions at the end of the session. So let's have a look at reading in Pearson English International Certificate. When we're discussing reading, we're discussing part 2 of the certificate of the test, part 2 that is called reading and writing. So we're going to discuss some tasks from this part, those tasks that, include reading skill. So we will discuss 4 tasks. The first task today will be choose the right picture from part 2. Then another task would be short answer questions, then choose the word or phrase, and then read and then write. So 4 tasks for today. So that's the agenda for our session. We'll have a look at some strategies, some activities to help our students excel at those tasks. So let's start with task number 1, the task that is called choose the right picture. What does the task look like? Those of you who are new to Pearson English International Certificate computer-based test, well, test takers read a short text and they select the best picture to match with the text. This is always a short text. There are 6 texts, and I just simply click on the right picture. This is a task for low levels only. So this is only level A1 and A2. And the scoring of this is simply correct or incorrect. So they can choose either a correct or incorrect section picture. And that's a question that tests the holistic understanding of short messages, notes, short pieces of writing. So what we will have here will be some notices, menus, for example, short pieces of correspondence. This is based on generally short texts and texts accompanied by pictures. And the strategies that we can work on, that we can teach our students, that will help our students do well in this task. Well, when it comes to this task where they have to match the picture, they have to choose the correct picture, this is very important that they focus on the question, on the question first, especially the question word. What's the focus on the question? This is how they start before they even read the text, because well, these are low level students, A1, A2, so they should we should make sure that they go through the procedure point by point, and they stay focused, because at these levels they are very still insecure doing different language tasks. So here, let's start, and the best strategy would be to start with focusing on the question. What is the question word? What is the focus of the question? Then they can go into the text, look for the keywords connected with the question asked, and after that they should go to the picture and identify the vocabulary items and eliminate pictures that do not contain all the correct vocabulary items. So let's have a look how we can practice these strategies, how we can teach these strategies with some coursebook material. In the coursebooks that you use in the classroom, you will find a lot of texts accompanied by pictures that could be used to practice the strategies for this choose the right picture task. And for example, in Speak Out 3rd edition, you will find a lot of text accompanied by pictures, especially in the sections devoted to vocabulary, because vocabulary in Speak Out is well introduced in context very often in the in a text. So you will find a lot of tasks where there is a question, there is a text, and there are some elements of matching with pictures, and you can use such tasks to practice the strategies that I discussed. So, for example, when you have a task like that, this is, as you can see, taken from Unit 3C A2 Plus Speak Out 3rd edition. First of all, we start, as I said, with the question itself, and we keep focus on, or we have the students focus on the question and identify the keywords in the question, especially the question word plus some keywords. So here they have to identify 4 problems in the text. Then we go to the text and we, well, analyze the text and look for the keywords in the text. So they go to the text and they analyze the problem. They identify the problems, and after that, another stage is go to pictures and find the vocabulary items in the pictures, and be careful, because the pictures obviously will contain some distractors, like, for example, picture D is a lost piece of jewelry, and picture F has some similar idea, because there is a vocabulary, there is a jewelry item there as well. The same story with picture B. When it discusses shoes. We also have shoes in picture G, but a little bit different problem. This is the same story in the certificate. There will be some distractors, so they have to very carefully identify and eliminate vocabulary items. So first the question, then the text, and then the pictures. That would be the best strategy to go through this task. some activity to introduce a little bit of fun element or competition element here. I can see that just looking quickly at the chat box, and there is a chat from Milagros that you are using Speak Out second edition. And this third edition has a lot of good changes. Yes, you are right. Thank you for that. Coming back to the activity that can introduce a little bit of fun elements or competition elements, I would recommend using wikihow.com, the website where you can find a lot of text accompanied by pictures. And there you can find instructions that are, well, represented in a form of pictures, and you can bring the pictures and the text into the class. For example, right, if you're discussing dancing, for example, or some form of entertainment, you can go and find how to dance a tango, and you will find pictures and instructions. This could be brought into the classroom, and in the classroom, students can work and match the instructions and pictures. You can obviously simplify the texts a little bit using some AI tools. It's a very easy thing to do, right? If you go to, I know, either Bard or ChatGPT, this artificial intelligence tools, you simply type the prompt, write this text in a simpler English, and the artificial intelligence tool will do it for you quite well. So if you feel that the texts are a little bit, the instructions are a little bit too difficult for the students, you can easily simplify them. And in class, the students match the instructions with the pictures. They can do it for time, or they can do it as a race. So the first group, as a group work, so the first group to finish will be the winners, and they will have to apply all those strategies, like looking for example, for some vocabulary items in the picture and in the text. So wikihow.com, a nice place to use for some extra activities to practice choosing the right picture skills. Another activity that I could suggest to introduce some elements of competition, fun, whatever you call it. You can take a text any text from your course book, right? This is taken from Gold Experience A1, and you hand out the text and you give them a time limit. This time limit is important because, well, we are preparing them for test conditions, and in test conditions, all reading is timed, actually. So you give them some time limit, I don't know, 3-4 minutes, depending on the length of the text. They read a text, they can use dictionaries, or they can ask you for some consultation, and they check any difficult words, any words that they do not understand. They work individually, the students, and after that, you put the students in pairs. And the first student, student A, says a word from the text, the word that they did not understand, that they had to check, for example, in the dictionary. So let's say the word, the student A says the word skin, and the other student, student B, has to do two things. The first thing is to say how this word is used in the text. So, for example, skin of oranges. And another thing they have to do is to give some other uses of the text, some other collocations, for example, I know, healthy skin. And they get 0, 1, or 2 points, depending how well they perform. And obviously, you can count points, and after a few rounds, you will determine the winner of this, let's say, competition. So you work with a casual text from a course book, and you work with in a little bit different way. You work on the vocabulary, and this way they're getting ready for identifying different items of vocabulary in the pictures that they will see in the international certificate computer-based test. So moving on to Another task, international Pearson English International Certificate, computer-based test. This is short answer questions. What does it look like? Well, that's a very obvious, I would say, task, because test takers read a longer text and they have to answer questions about the text. So that's a classic question or classic task. This is a task that you will find in higher levels. So that's B1 and above in the test. So lower levels do not have this kind of task. They have this finding the right picture task, not this. And scoring, well, obviously, this is again correct or incorrect, or we could call it partial credit, because they get a point for each correctly answered questions. There are a few questions accompanying the text, and each correctly answered question gets a point. And the idea, what is tested here is understanding of specific, being able to understand specific information included in the text. So I would say a classic task. Let's see how we can approach it, right? So let's have a look at some strategies to help our students get through this task in the test. So first of all, skimming would be a necessary skill to teach students here, because first of all, they have to understand the structure of the text, the topic of the text, what is the text about. So that's skimming, the going through the text in a very general way. And after that, they can go to the question. They should go to the questions, and they should focus on keywords in the questions, so that they are able to scan, now scanning, for the details in the text. So being able to identify the keywords in the questions will help them scan the text later for the details. And what is important here in this kind of task is to give concise answers, no more than 3 words, and they should be taught to be able to give concise answers here. So again, how can we work with some material from course books, and how can we teach the strategies using the material from course books? So you will find a lot of tasks in your course books with a text and questions about the text, right? That's a classic task, so there won't be any problem. This one that you can see in the slide has been taken from Roadmap B1. And when you have a task like that, teach them to start with, before they look at the text, to start with focusing on question words, right? Who, when, were, especially in the level B1, right? So a little bit lower level. You could also work with some prediction. So if there's a question who, so what would you expect to, what would you be looking for in the text? A name of a person, for example. Or when, you'd be looking for some dates, some time, something like that. So practice a little bit of predicting, so that this predicting will keep them focused on the content of the keywords. And after that, also you can use tasks like that to teach them to look for concise answers, right? So let's say no more than 3 words, as I said, so they can identify, for example, in the text, concise answers. And instead of, for example, where did it take place, question 3, and instead of answering it took place in Indonesia, just teach them that writing or giving the answer Indonesia only, without anything else, is absolutely fine, because this is what we're looking for here, being able to answer concisely. And some ideas for, again, questions, some ideas for some activities that will introduce the element of fun or competition. So you can, again, work with some course books that you use. You need to prepare a few short texts or a few sections of a longer text. So you will find a lot of text in your course books divided into sections, for example, just like the one here taken from Roadmap B1, a text that consists of 5 sections. So if you have a text like that, right, or a few short texts, you should prepare one question for each text or for each section of the text, and the answers should be one word only. And after that, you prepare a crossword puzzle sheet where the words across are the answers to the questions from the texts. That's why this one word answer is important here, because they have to put the answer into the crossword puzzle sheet. And you can organize, you can write some scavenger hunt, for example, some timed reading stations in different parts of your classroom where they go and they have very specific time to read through the section or through the short text and find the answer, one word answer to the question, and they put this one word answer into the question, into the crossword puzzle sheet. So what we have here, we have to practicing concise answers, because they have to come up with one word answer to the question that they get. We have reading in timed condition, obviously, as well, because, well, there's a limited time when they can read the text. And we have a little bit of fun competition here, because obviously the team can win only if they complete all crossword puzzle. So well, you can take text from a course book and you can, well, use it a little bit different way. Another idea for an activity to practice skills necessary for short answer questions. Again, you can take a longer text from your course book. This is an example of a Speak Out Third Edition, and you cut the text into sections. So you get a pile of sections of a text, and after that, you give each student a section of the text, and they have to prepare a question based on this section. So they play, as if to say, they act as item writers. This is what I like doing in exam preparation classes. I ask my students very often to put themselves into the shoes of item writers so that they can see how exam items are prepared. What are the techniques, mechanisms? So here, this is what they do. They have to prepare a question for the section. So they get the section and they prepare a question. For example, where did the writer go to quit university? And they give you the questions back, right? Once they have written down the questions, they give you the questions back. You can display the questions so that everybody can see all the questions. And they give you back the section they have been reading as well. So you have, again, a pile of sections of the text. And after that, students take texts from the pile with the sections, with the texts, and they read some new sections. And they have to guess which question relates to which section of the text. So it's not answering the questions as such, but it's just identifying which question will match which section. So again, a little bit of different way of working with reading, working with texts. They have to identify questions, and this way they also practice some strategies necessary for short answer activities. And another task here, it's choose the word or phrase. Another task that tests reading. And let's have a look at what is happening here. I'm just having a quick look at the chat box. Right, so there are still some greetings and some remarks from you that you like this idea of collaborative and collaboration and challenge. Thank you for that. That's for Manuel and Maria. Okay, so let's look at another task that tests reading skills. This is choose the word or phrase. What does it look like? So what we get here is a short text that is accompanied by 3 options, and test takers have to read this text and select the best word or phrase to complete the text. And this is a task for all levels. So at every level, you have this kind of task. And mind you, it might look like a classic gap fill activity where students or test takers are asked to identify correct collocation. But it doesn't work this way, actually. It's a little bit different, because for this task, as you will see in a moment, it's not that much the collocation, it's the understanding of the text, the meaning of the text, the idea, the purpose of the text that enables the test takers to complete the gap. But let's look at it. Obviously, it's scored correct or incorrect, that's clear. And the skill that is tested, the sub-skill, is the learner's holistic understanding of short messages, notes, and short pieces of writing. So nothing here about collocations, as a matter of fact. What we have here, it's understanding of short messages, notes, and pieces of writing. Those short messages, this short piece of writing, are very specific kind of writing, and being able to understand notices, advertisements, menus, things like that is an important skill. And what are the strategies here? Obviously, here a good strategy would be to read the whole text first quickly to make sure they understand the topic, the meaning, the purpose of the text. So first, ignoring the gap, obviously, not looking at the options, just understanding the meaning, the purpose, the topic of the text. So what this text is about, what is this text trying to achieve? For example, this is the first, the most important task. And then we can look at the keywords in the prompt and look at the options and look at the context around the gap to try and predict the word or type of a word. And this is very important here to the strategy, kind of preparation strategy, is to work a lot with short messages, notes, advertisements, this kind of text, because these are very specific texts and these are used in this task. So, as I said, when you have a task like that, it's important to, the first a step, I would say, towards finding the solution here is to analyze the purpose and type of text. So let's look at that. Use the chat box and tell me the text that you can see in this slide. What's the purpose? What's the type of this text? Look at it and tell me what's the purpose, maybe the purpose, especially the purpose of this text. What is the writer trying to achieve here? Okay, a little bit of time. Promoting cat food from Isabel. Thank you very much. The type is informative promotion, persuade. Great, this is exactly that. That's an advertisement, right? So the writer is trying to sell something to us. Because when you look at the options now here, as a matter of fact, every word could go into the gap, right? Every word collocates with the choice, I would say. But When we focus on the collocation only, doesn't help us much. But when we know what kind of text this is, that this is an advertisement, that the writer is trying to sell, to persuade us, as Leonor typed, so then we know that the word that we need here is perfect choice, because that's the word that you would expect in this kind of an advertisement. So as I said, it's not that much about collocations. It's more about understanding the meaning, the topic, the purpose of the text. It's also important that you focus, that students, the important strategy is that students analyze and focus on the keywords in the prompt. This also helps. So what would you say? Another text, another prompt. What are the 3 keywords in this prompt? Can you suggest what for you would be 3 keywords? Before we see the options, without predicting what could go into the gap, but what would you say? The 3 keywords for this short text, short prompt. Let's see. Children clothing weather from Angie. Great. Play cold children from Maria. Wear clothing cold from Isabel. Right, exactly. So these are those. Well, my suggestion, thank you very much for this. My suggestion would be yeah, outside weather cold, but basically when you look at the keywords in the text, they will also help the students guess the choice, because when you when you look at the options, again, each word could go into the gap, right? Each word collocates with clothing, but when you focus on the keywords, which is, well, you suggest it's also some other, but outside weather cold, then you know that what we need is warm clothing, because the keywords also help us that to decide here. So this is this kind of task, not about collocation that much. It's about understanding. It's about seeing the purpose, the meaning of the text, and these are the strategies to use to help your students. And as I said, it's important to expose your students to a lot of this kind of writing, short messages, advertisements, menus, notices, because they will face this kind of text in the test. So you can also find a lot of material in your course book. For example, Speak Out has this great mediation bank at the end. This is some kind of a separate section at the end of the course book, where students work within some context, within some scenario, and very often the scenario is introduced through some short texts like that, so messages, notices, some infographics. So you'll find a lot of texts like that there, for example, but obviously you can find those in many other course books as well. And when you, for example, work with those with texts like that, make your students guess some words. For example, here, can you guess the shaded words in the 2 texts I have selected? So what would you say? Look at them for a moment. Okay, in the meantime, some remarks from the chat box. So learning how to find meaning and purpose in short reading, it's a great idea. This is I would say a great idea for an exam item, where they have to show that they are able to read these texts, that because these are the texts that we come across very often. I wouldn't even say most often in everyday life. And what we have here, I'm checking for some words. So the left hand infographic. Okay, so text A, you would say habits from Isabel. And the text on the right, entertainment, for example. Right, exactly. Great, fantastic. Thank you for engaging here. Let me uncover the words. Here, obviously, habits. Well, entertainment was a good guess. Actually, that was cultural activities, as you can see. But this is a kind of task that you can do. You can make them guess, and this way they use the knowledge, their understanding of those short texts to guess what is missing in the gap. So this way they are also getting ready for this choose the right phrase task. Another activity where a little bit of predicting will be involved on the students' part. You put students in pairs and you give them two halves of the same text, right? The text here has been taken from Speak Out workbook. So Speak Out workbook has a separate section for reading where you can find a lot of good reading material, good reading preparation. So you can take two halves of a text, and one student will be a noun student and another student will be a verb student. Why noun and verb? Because the noun student will have to shade 4 nouns in the text, and the verb student will have to shade 4 verbs in the text. And obviously they exchange the texts, and the other student has to guess the shaded words. So again, inferring the meaning from this short text will be employed, and the points are given here for the shading student gets points for every word that the other student has guessed. So this way you kind of force your students to look at the words, identify the words that will be, for example, easy to guess, right? That have a lot of clues. So this way they also identify the types of words. They learn how to identify nouns, how to identify verbs, and this also helps in doing or completing the task where they have to choose the right word or phrase. And the last task for today, the task that is actually read and write task. So this is a task that combines reading and writing skills. This is generally a rule for this, actually for international certificate, Pearson English International Certificate, that a lot of tasks test skills in combination. So reading, as a matter of fact, is tested in combination with writing, and this task that we're going to cover as well. Reading is also tested in combination with speaking. Previously, in May, we discussed the task called Read Aloud, where reading and speaking are combined. Reading is also tested in combination with listening. You're going to, in the session devoted to listening, you're going to discuss also reading and listening tasks, so-called hotspots. Actually, reading in this test is tested, in this certificate is tested in combination with some other skills, and here we can see this task that combines reading and writing. So what kind of task is that? So students or test takers read a short story, a short piece of factual text, and the text then disappears after 30 seconds. So they have 30-second reading, I'd say, period, and then they have to reconstruct the text. And this is all levels. So every level has to do the task. Obviously, the difficulty of the text will vary, but the task will have to be done by all levels. And scoring here, well, scoring is based on some traits. There are 4 traits the mark is based on. So this is grammar, vocabulary, formal requirements, and content. And grammar, vocabulary, and formal requirements are the traits connected with writing here. So we're not going to discuss them, but the last one, content, well, this is based on understanding the text. So let's have a quick look at what kind of trait is that. So what would you say what is assessed, right? When it comes content, what does it mean content as a scoring trait in this kind of task? So what would be the elements of content that are assessed here in this task? Let me have a look at the chat box. Accuracy of information. All right. Thank you, Isabel, for sharing your ideas. Important details. Okay, right. Obviously, when it comes to content, what is assessed by the algorithm, that is assessing this computer-based test, is the question if the key points of the passage are addressed, right? So that's exactly what you have mentioned, like important details. So are all key points addressed in the produced text? And is the text well represented or misrepresented? So the purpose of the topic of the text is or is not misrepresented. So are there any new pieces of information, for example, added? So then the student, the test taker, is penalized for that. So in order to, well, do well in content item trait, this is important that the test taker really understands the text, and let's focus on that right now. So we're going to focus on this reading aspect here. We're not going to discuss writing. That's another session in November, but here is this reading. So this moment, the test taker has 30 seconds to read the text and to get ready to reconstruct it in writing. So what about this reading? Again, a very important skill, skimming. They don't have much time here. So what they have to do, they have to skim the text for this general topic to be able to say what the general topic of this text is, and then read for the main ideas. And it all has to be done within 30 seconds. So they have to focus on the gist of the story, on a narrative structure, what it is, and they should ignore any, well, grammar words, prepositions, articles. It's simply like should be skipped because there is no time like reading very carefully the text, and especially there is no time to get stuck with the words they don't understand. So they should be able to read the text without, if it happens, without understanding every single word. No getting stuck here, no time to like guess from the context, or just they have to ignore the words they don't understand. So some ideas for activities to again introduce this element of fun and to practice the strategies that I mentioned. Again, you can use some text from the course books that you use. For this activity I'm going to discuss, it would be generally for read and then write tasks. It's the best texts would be those that contain some story, some narrative structure. So you hand out a text, preferably some kind of narrative. This one is taken from Roadmap B2, as you can see. And you give them some short time to skim through the text, right? So this timed condition is important, right? Not much time. Give them half a minute, depending on the length of the text, maybe 1 minute, but don't give them too much time to read in detail. The idea for this task is to skim through it, to get the idea of the narrative structure of the text, and you take the text back, right? So they cannot, so that they know they don't have time. They have just 30 seconds and they will have to give the text back. And you can ask your students to draw a tree, or you give them a picture of a tree with, for example, 3 branches or 4 branches. That depends on the narrative structure of this text. And the students have to label particular elements of the tree, the trunk and the branches, based on the text. And for example, well, what we would have here would be the whole story starts with the installation, right? So the trunk would be labeled installation. Then we have some information about empty bottles, etc. After that, leftover rubbish. And my question to you is, can you label the top branch, right? So we have some kind of narrative structure of this text. So what would be the last branch here? What are your ideas for the names, for the label here? Artistic performance, okay, from Maria. Attract attention. Yes, from Maria remarks, so you agree that practicing skimming and mind maps helps a lot. Yes, skimming is an important skill, especially here, I would say, in a party, artwork, right? Okay, so these are the ideas from you. Well, when you look at it, well, this last element of this narrative structure would be this international attention that the installation drew because of some events or some, let's say, turmoil around it. So, and you can do this kind of activity again, a little bit of fun element, working a little bit different way, and helping them to, well, visualize the narrative structure of the text, which is also good mnemonic technique for this kind of task where they have to reconstruct the text. Another activity, you can take, again, any text from your course book, like here it's Gold Experience B2, and you shade some words in the text. The idea behind shading the words is obviously to make your students work with the text where they don't have all the words. So just it's like a situation in which they don't understand every single word. And the idea is to teach them not to get stuck with the words they cannot understand, for example. So they work with the shaded, as if to say, text. Give them time limit, very important. Again, let's say 1 minute or even shorter, depending on the length of the text, and ask them to put the text away. Again, and after that, give them a list of questions, general questions about the text, like what is the main topic of this text? What is the purpose of this text? How is this text organized? Questions like that, so that they are, to show them, this activity will show them that they are able to give a lot of information about the text, even without, well, being able to read every single word in the text, because some words were shaded. And even if they have very little time for doing that, they still will be able to give a lot of information about this text. And this information that they are able to give will help them later to reconstruct the text when they have to do that in the computer-based test. And one more activity to practice some skills, strategies necessary for read and then write. Again, you take a paragraph, preferably again with some narrative structure, because typically in this task, in computer-based test, we have narrative, some text with narrative structure. So you take one paragraph from any narrative in your course book. This one is Roadmap B2, as you can see. And you divide the text into sentences. A very useful tool for that is if you go online and you take structurize.com. It's a tool which will change scanned text into digital text that you can easily divide into sentences. So very, very useful tool that I use when I have some screenshots, right, or some scans of texts. Very quickly you can change the text into sentences, for example, scanned text. So you cut the text into sentences. So you have a pile of sentences. And then you obviously you prepare a few copies of the same text. So it's not just one copy, like 2, maybe 3 copies. And then you have your students work in a group of 3, 4, that depends on how many sentences you have. You shuffle and deal out the pieces, the sentences of the text. So each student gets some sentences from the text, and students, what they do, they try to exchange the pieces by describing them, but not showing them. For example, so I have on offer a sentence about a man who is doing this and this, right? Or I have on offer a sentence about a man falling into some, I know, a hole, for example. So they do not read out a sentence, they talk about the sentences, and they have to exchange, they have to trade the sentences, as if to say, and the winner will be the student with that completes the text first. So this is trading sentences. Again, a little bit of fun competition, and they work with this narrative structure of this text, and that will help them a lot. So we are heading towards the end. Let me just have a look at the chat. I will ask you in a moment, just going quickly through the entries in the chat. So I'm going to talk about, just to finish, I'm going to talk a little bit about the takeaways, but I'd like you to take away with you. But in a moment, I'll ask you about your takeaways as well. So some summary of what we've been discussing. In computer-based tests, students need various techniques: skimming, scanning, identifying purpose of the short text, and, well, preparing students for this test means helping them with those techniques, because in different parts of the test they will need them. You can find a lot of material, a lot of preparation material in Pearson courseware, even if the book doesn't specifically say preparation course for computer-based test, Pearson English International Certificate. Still, you can adapt many, many activities from your course books and, well, turn them into good exam preparation activities. Very important. I've been emphasizing that today. It's very important to help your students manage the time effectively. They are doing the test under timed condition, and they have to be quite effective time-wise at reading texts. And well, you have to remember that reading in computer-based tests is very often tested in combination. So it's not only reading, it's sometimes combined with speaking, with listening, with writing. So there are also tasks that combine reading with some other skills. And a little bit more physical takeaway from today's meeting. Remember that on the website, if you scan the QR code, you can get access to the website. On the website, you have some interesting material to use. So you have some more activities, strategies discussed in this lesson plan ideas. So you have some PDF documents devoted to each task that discusses some more activities and also the strategies for your students. And there's this digital notebook to be downloaded with the homework, and the homework from today's session will be, well, planning a lesson with wikihow.com, planning some activity with pictures, images, and text accompanied by pictures and images. So these are the takeaways from me. What are your takeaways here, right? So what are you taking away with you from this meeting today? If you could share in the chat box, thank you very much. Okay. So I'm taking a lot of strategies. Okay, great idea for my students from Diana, right? Good. All right. So thanks for that. I'm going to have a look at some questions in questions and answers, if there's anything to be addressed. here. Okay, let me, I'm sorry, I can't read all the chats right now because they are appearing so quickly, just going through them. Okay, so Alejandra liked the reading stations, the scavenger hunt. Thank you for that. Okay. Just going through. If I do not react to some there is a request from Francesca sorry. I would like to connect with some Pearson regarding the serious focus on grammar. I think that that you should contact your, maybe Francesca, your local Pearson representative, or if you get an email from after today's session, there will be organizers also there, so you can reply the organizers. So thank you for that, Francesca. Right. Okay, so remember that that's not the end of Teachers Academy. We are continuing, and the next meeting is taking place on the 28th of September. It's devoted to developing self-efficacy with my colleague Bartek Janiak. So please feel free to register for this session. Thank you very much, and well, see you in the session devoted to writing that will take place on the 7th of November. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the day. Right, there are some questions in Q&A, sorry, in the meantime. There's a question from me. Will students be penalized for grammar mistakes in the short answered questions? Yes, they will be if the question, if the grammar problem makes it incomprehensible, for example, then yes, that's why I try to emphasize this necessity for concise answer, as few elements as possible in the answer. Practically no grammar. It says here that the answer should be up to 3 words. So practically speaking, there is no grammar in the answer. These are just, like, I would say, vocabulary items typically. So that's why they should not give complete sentences, because, well, there's this risk that they make a grammar mistake, which will make it, as I said, incomprehensible. Is there a listening question from Cesar? Is there a listening activities assessing webinar as well? Yes, listening, a session devoted to listening skills will take place on the 10th of October, right? So remember to register, Cesar, right? Yes, there is still a session on listening and a session on writing ahead of us. Okay, right. So thank you very much. And once again, see you in the session devoted to writing. Thank you.